Hello, everybody. Blessed day to you all. It's wonderful to be here with you. My name is Alexandra. I am really stoked to be back subbing for Karina this week. She will be back next week, so stay tuned for her return. But yeah, I'm really honored to be back with you. So thank you all for being here. And sending my gratitude for showing up, whether you're here live or catching the replay. So before we dive into today's topic, grief as a way toward loving thyself, we will just kind of drop into a collective meditation to check in with ourselves and really allow ourselves to fully arrive into this space so we can be more aware and receive what it is that we came here to receive. So let's go ahead and do that. So finding yourself just in a position that is comfortable for your body, where you can breathe with ease and not be too rigid, but beginning to collect your attention and awareness into the space around you. So I invite you to close your eyes if that's comfortable for you. And bringing in the awareness to the space around you. So just noticing any noises happening in the space, in the room that you're in. Coming to notice the temperature, maybe how that feels on your skin. And then coming to notice the sensations of the breath as we begin to enter into the inner terrain of your experience. So go ahead and take a big breath in through the nose, expanding the belly and the chest, sipping in a little bit more at the top of the inhale, and giving yourself a nice long exhale out the mouth, sensing your awareness and energy settling a bit more into your body. We'll do that again. Big breath in through the nose, sipping in a little bit more at the top, and exhale out the mouth. Good, and collectively we'll do that one more time together. Big breath in, really opening the space of the belly and the chest. Inhale a little bit more at the top. And sighing out the mouth, really releasing any tension that you need to fully arrive in your body here. So as you continue to tune in and sense the sensations of the breath, feeling the belly expanding, the chest expanding, you're letting the breath kind of be at a natural pace. You're not controlling the breath at all, but simply just noticing. And you can kind of begin to feel the connection of the ground or the chair beneath you. Feeling supported. Just noticing what is here for you. Experimenting with simply stepping back into the space of observance rather than attachment or judgment of what may be arising for you. We're simply just checking in with what is true right now. And so a good way of doing that is simply feeling like the breath is breathing you, like you are being breathed by the breath, that you're not controlling anything, but just noticing this very moment, the aliveness that is available to you. Just letting everything else fade away into the background. And so, yeah, really becoming present with the belly space. Maybe you feel the belly expanding on the inhale and contracting on the exhale. And it can just be a subtle movement, doesn't have to be big. Again, we're not trying to control the breath here. Just dropping into any subtle sensations that may be arising. And on your next inhale, go ahead and allow your awareness to rise up into the space of the heart. And noticing what might be present here in the terrain of your emotions. Letting judgment fall away to the side. You can notice what judgment comes up, but don't attach to it. Maybe you sense your heart beating. And then on your next inhale again, you'll bring the awareness up into the space of the mental landscape. And bringing a sense of curiosity here and just noticing if the terrain is busy or calm. Harsh or easy, or some other form of noticing. Maybe you have some story playing out in the mind from the past or gaming out the future of the day or the rest of this week. Just being aware of that and coming back to the sensation of the breath. Good. And then coming into a sense of the entire body connected, sensing the space in your body fully, just full of your energy, being fully embodied. Maybe noticing the perimeter of your skin as the container of that awareness. And then breathing in space for your intention for our time together today to arise from this place within. And opening your inner ear to listen to that voice that might be quiet. It's this deeper sense of knowing that stems from within. And so with your attention remaining within your body, I invite you to begin opening your eyes at whatever pace feels good to you, and just begin to reorient to your space around and staying in touch with the breath in your body as much as possible. You can go ahead and gaze over both shoulders, kind of just settling the nervous system, knowing that you're in a safe space to be able to reorient to our Sangha here in the virtual realm. So hello, everybody. Welcome, welcome. I'd love for you to pop in the chat your intention for today. And when we share our intention, it really kind of ignites it more into the collective. And so you can feel free to type it in the chat if you want to say it out loud with yourself on mute and just speak it with your own vibration. That also is a good way of just bringing the intention into the light to make it happen today. Anna, peace, ease, and calm. Yes. Tanya, my intention today is to stay grounded in peace. Absolutely. Candace, I am here to be still. Good. Marlene, connection. Rebecca, ease. Alan, to regain centered energy and a sense of calmness. Beautiful. Shannon, tend my inner fire. I love that. Yes. So important, isn't that? Yeah. Keep our inner flame alive. Wonderful. Well, it's again so wonderful to be here with all of you. Some familiar faces and some new faces. So yeah, we'll go ahead and dive into our topic today. Is grief as a way toward loving thyself. And yeah, grief, I mean, as I'm sure we all know, is a super powerful emotion. And it has this power that can really kind of overtake and feel like there's this whole physical reaction as well. And it's oftentimes to the loss of someone or something in our life. And it can generally be characterized by these deep feelings of sadness and sorrow. And it really comes from this like yearning for things to be as they once were, or how we might wish them to be in the future. And so it's a very natural feeling grief, but there's often, we tend to suppress the feelings of grief because of how powerful they might feel, how big of a feeling it is, and how raw of an emotion it is. And so, yeah, we can often be afraid of feeling the fear from the belief that we might not be able to handle the pain, that it might, we tend to, yeah, it's like think that, oh my gosh, like I might have a heart attack because of this pain or something. And the true is actually opposite, is if we suppress that pain, it becomes hard in our hearts, and that can actually create more dis-ease. Whereas if we trust that the capacity to handle grief and the pain is already within us, we can move through it, and actually allows the pain to dissolve. And yeah, it's interesting because if we hold on or suppress the grief, it really allows us to not really live fully. And if we don't learn how to embrace it, we often can go through the rest of our lives not opening or not caring to love again fully. And we just end up going through the motions and not really feeling that joy that's already innately within us. It's like almost, it causes this block. And yeah, so when we do suppress the feelings of grief, we experience the existence of suffering. And the suffering is taught in the First Noble Truth by the Buddha as the existence of suffering. That's just part of this world that we live in, is suffering. And the Second Noble Truth is the causes of suffering in this world. So there are many causes of suffering that we experience, and especially since the pandemic, we can clearly see the many causes, whether it's death and the loss of a loved one, illness or diagnosis for ourselves or others, losing a job of employment, divorce or strenuous relationships, like holding even a naive belief in our own invincibility, and on a more subtle level, just the mere passing of time is something to grieve as well. So there's a lot of in between things to grieve as well. Things that have happened in our past, that we haven't had the strength before to confront, and we are now confronting it. All of those kind of call for grief. And we see this all over the world too. Like all of us are vulnerable to it. There's not a single human being that is not vulnerable to feel grief. So in that way, we are all connected in that way. And there is also a lot of lessons that we can learn from moving through our grief and trusting that space. And so just a personal vulnerability for me here, over the last 8 months, I've been going through a separation from my husband of 3 years. And with that, there's a lot of grief. And I've also, I've had a lot of experiences in my own life that have caused a lot of grief. And it's been a learning process of how to navigate grief, because when I was younger, going through a lot of ill health, I was in and out of doctors a lot, and just kind of close to death quite a few times. And I never properly knew how to grieve it, because it was like I was the one that was too emotional. And so I suppressed a lot of my feelings because other people felt uncomfortable with my own grief. So therefore, I never really learned. And so going through this process of separating from my husband, I've been able to get more familiar with the terrain of grief and how beautiful it really is. It's such a transformative emotion to be able to feel and move through. And you really become more intimate with yourself and get to know yourself on a deeper level. And I think that's what we're all truly longing for. And so it's just trusting that space of the deep pain that we can feel, and how that can really alchemize and transform through just the practice of loving kindness. And it's not an easy practice by any means, but the more that we open our heart to that practice, the more familiar we become with it, and the more that we recognize it when it arises, we can move through it quicker, and yeah, just start to like transmute those feelings and that like the heaviness that we might feel and hold on to, because it is a protective mechanism on a lot of levels. And so yeah, I just encourage that, like, just softening of the heart, because yeah, the capacity to hold that grief is already within you. Like, there's nothing that you need to go find. There's nothing that you need to wait for in order to like hold that grief in your heart. Like, the capacity is already there. And it's just the dropping in and allowing the heart to bloom into that capacity, and loving yourself. And so it is just this process of like recognizing it when it arises, and like allowing it, sitting with it, and feeling it fully with compassion and loving kindness. And so those are all tools that we practice through the practice of mindfulness. Like, mindfulness is the basis for all of that, because if we're not aware, if we're not mindful of it, we just don't know. Like, there's a disconnect there, right? And so let's see. I do want to say too that, like, the subtlety of, like, everyone's grief is so unique to them, right? Like, and it depends on the season of life that you're going through right now. Sometimes it's really really heavy, and it's like big reasons for grieving, right? Other times, it could be really subtle. Like I mentioned earlier, just the passing of each moment is something to grieve, right? And so there's a spectrum, and it's going to shift and change throughout our lives depending on, again, what season we're going through. And so it's important to bring this like mental state of not judging what you're grieving, right? Because it's all valid. All forms of grieving are worthy of your care. All forms of grieving are worthy of your attention and love. And it invites the practice of compassion, of karuna, of yourself and for others through grief. And, if we continue to like go down this path of not embracing our grief, we really do become numb to our experience, and the experience can become even more traumatic and can plague every aspect of your life that stems from that. And just allowing it, and mindfulness is the enlightening practice and becoming more familiar with your internal process. And yeah, like, because we suppress our grief, oftentimes it stems from a huge societal point of view too, because, I'm sure all of us have heard, growing up as children too, like, oh, stop crying, oh, don't cry. And like, when it's like, and then when people cry in front of you, like, oh, I'm so sorry, like, I'm so sorry, like, I don't know where these are coming from, like, why I'm crying. And so we have this societal idea that like grief is something that like we're not supposed to express or feel or share with others. And so it's like a pattern that we've developed to bury it under layers and keep it kind of suppressed. And it's like those layers can end up manifesting and showing up in like anxiety and anger and like become more hardened. And so, I want to encourage you too, like, if anger is arising, like, there's usually like a more subtle emotion that's underneath that, like having the ability to inquire, like, oh, like, I'm feeling angry, like, where is this coming from? Like, investigate, like, have curiosity to like just drop into your practice of being mindful, connecting to the breath, and like, okay, like, where am I feeling this in the body? Like, what is going on, like, truly, but it takes a level of surrender to enter that space of willingness to self-inquire. So that's why we practice mindfulness in a more formal setting. So then when we are practicing mindfulness in the more informal setting throughout our lives, it's like, we can catch it, and then we can drop into a more formal setting easier to really investigate. And then, it just becomes easier when we notice when those things arise. It's like more quick. It's like, oh, like, I'm feeling angry. Like, you can drop in even quicker. And so, like I was saying earlier too, like, if we do deny our own love, our compassion and care for these deep passing feelings, and again, all feelings are temporal. Everything in this existence is temporal. So that's something important to remember, is that nothing is going to last forever, because often when we feel these deep feelings of pain and sorrow, we think it's going to last forever. And that's when we shut down and we're like, oh my gosh, I can't feel this forever. I can't handle this. But know that it will pass. And with your love and compassion and care, like, that's the way through. The only way to the other side to feel lighter and brighter and closer to yourself is through the pain, right? It's like we try to kind of avoid it and move around it, and it just creates more suffering for ourselves, right? And that's okay. That's sometimes our journey that we have to go through and learn from, so like holding space for that as well. Nothing's wrong with that. But just knowing that, yeah, if we can just surrender to the feeling and understand that the capacity to feel that pain is already innately within us. Yeah. And it's like the grief and anger and all of that, really, honestly, it becomes density in the body. It becomes like like the dark places, right, in ourselves that we try to hide from people. And so simply just like shining awareness and light into those dark places, like, those dark places begin to dissolve and become part of the light again. And so it really is like the awareness is the key component. Mindfulness is the key component. And that's why we practice. And it's like that old saying, old habits die hard. I think it's really relevant here because we have developed these coping mechanisms in order to avoid feeling our deep pain. And so these habits and patterns have developed to avoid it. And so, sometimes it can be like when you're sitting and you're maybe a little bored, and you like just are like, oh, maybe I'll open the fridge and see what I can eat. And, just distracting ourselves when we're bored from, because when we tend to like slow down, like things begin to arise from within us that might feel uncomfortable and unfamiliar. And so then we start to distract ourselves with old patterns and habits that keep us feeling safe and in the known. And so, yeah, if we can like allow that density of the suppression to kind of release and like be willing to investigate like a new way of doing things, like, okay, like I'm not hungry, but I want to go to the fridge and like eat something. Like what might be here? Like what might I be needing to fulfill that food might not satisfy me, but like there's a deeper reason that I need satisfaction right now. Like food might not do it, but what is deeper? Like what is under this? Right. And so there's other, that's just one example of how we might distract ourselves from those arising feelings. And mindfulness allows us to notice those things and kind of investigate a little bit deeper to create new neural pathways to heal, right? And healing is not linear. Grief is not linear. Like none of this is linear. And it's like you can become your own expert at your inner terrain to navigate your own experiences. And so, yeah, the good news is that grief and suffering, like we can heal from grief, and the cessation of suffering is possible. And this is taught in the third noble truth by the Buddha as well. And so, yeah, healing is possible. Healing from grief is possible. That's something to remember and recall as well when we're feeling those deep feelings that might feel overwhelming. Is just, oh yeah, like breathing into the heart, opening, like allowing the heart to bloom into that capacity to hold what is already within you. Yeah. And so in the fourth noble truth, that is the Eightfold Path, which is the path that we can follow to end suffering around our grief. And specifically, the seventh component of the Eightfold Path is right mindfulness. And like I said earlier, this is the basis for all other components on the path. Because without mindfulness, without right mindfulness, like we are unaware of the truth that lies within us. So to cultivate the practice of mindfulness and to be able to have just a simple recognition that there is suffering here, that there is grief here, whether it's despair, helplessness, hopelessness, like just that alone, that simple recognition, just being there for what is, like that's a huge win. That's a deep practice on its own. And with the practice of mindfulness as well, and mindfulness being non-judgmental awareness of the present moment, we can really learn to grow our inner awareness and open our heart to hold the pain with compassion, and to trust our innate capacity to truly survive as we move through it toward thriving, right? Like we can survive into our thriving, and the intensity of the pain almost immediately subsides once we recognize and allow. And it's like the feeling from within will emanate this lightness that we will feel on the other side. And so it's that moving through, just moving through. And the more that we can surrender, like the easier the path becomes. The more that we can just drop in and feel and notice what is here, breathing with that, allowing the emotions to move through, because emotions are energy in motion, right? And so if we suppress emotion, we're blocking them from moving, and that just creates like that hardness that builds within us, and then layers on layers just become like surrounding that hardness. And so if we can just like allow that emotion to move through, like it flows, and you feel lighter, right? It's like after a good cry, like after you like go through like feeling the grief and you go through a good cry, like how much lighter do you feel right away? Right? Just on every level. It's like emotionally, like physically, it's a release. It truly is a release. And like tears alone are such a powerful tool that is like encoded and embedded in this human body for us to express and release. Like it really like pulls out the heaviness from within your body and like is literally releasing them out of your tears. And so just, yeah, getting more comfortable with crying. And it's like crying isn't a negative thing. It's like one of the most beautiful things in the healing process. And like I said earlier too, it's like a lot of us have been told that like, oh, stop crying, like, and we've been taught to suppress it. And when we allow ourselves to truly like cry and grieve, it you get more familiar with giving yourself permission, and it gives other people permission to feel what is true for them as well. And so it's not only like you're not only healing yourself and your timeline, but you're also like it's part of the collective healing process as well, and that ripples out to everyone you touch and everyone they touch, and eventually it's like the whole collective. And yeah, and so here it is like a remembering of our capacity to navigate through the grief, feel the feeling fully, and trust the capacity already within us, and that deep surrendering. And when we do that, it's like we expand our tenacity to more wholly embody and trust in our own Buddha nature. And the awareness, trust, and acceptance of the grief and pain, it's like, yeah, shining the light and immediately dissolving the density of these held emotions. And so we are learning the art of allowance through mindfulness, and trusting that by allowing our emotions to move through the embodied experience with karuna, compassion, and metta, loving kindness toward ourselves, that capacity really increases to holding others' grief as well. And so you become like a pillar for others, you're like shining a light on their grief so they can see that they can shine their own light on their grief, and so on. And it's like this collective healing can really happen, but it starts from within our own inner terrain and understanding ourselves and exploring ourselves too. And yeah, just it builds a lot of intimacy with ourselves and trust within ourselves. And oftentimes that can be scary, is this concept of intimacy. And, it's grief is such a raw emotion. Like just in my recent experience of going through what I've been going through, it's nothing brings you closer to yourself than grief. Like there can't be anything between you and your grief. And it's like you're there, you're in the rawness of yourself. And to me that is so beautiful. Like it's scary because it might be unfamiliar, but it's actually like, I don't fear grief anymore. Like I invite it. And that's something that, I wish for everybody, because it is like, oh, like this is me. This is me in my wholeness right now, like just in this raw grief of like nothing else exists. And yeah, the capacity to navigate that is within you, is within your heart, to hold yourself in that love, in that compassion, without judgment of what it is you're grieving, but just the expression, the release is what is needed. And so, yeah, so as a little recap, knowing that grief is natural and raw, and it's a normal feeling that most deserves to be held in our love, and it's begging for your love and attention. Like it's begging you, you know? And so when you feel that discomfort, it's just, that's your body's signal of like, I'm here, like and it's just up to us to learn how to listen. And that's mindfulness is a huge practice in that. And so, yeah, cultivating the practice of mindfulness and self-awareness so that you can become aware of your inner terrain and really become your own expert at your inner exploration, your own inner understanding, or as inner standing, as some people call it. And in the practice of mindfulness, it's learning to listen and feel without that judgment. There's that intuitive voice within all of us, and sometimes the mental mind is much louder because we've been giving that, you know, it's like it's the connection that we've been giving more power to. And so the more that we can tune into our inner terrain and listen to that intuitive voice, the intuitive voice starts to become louder and the mind can start to become a little bit quieter. And so there's this like dynamic that shifts with that. And yeah, becoming more familiar with your inner critic as well, and the stories and the narratives that have been replaying from your past. You know, that is part of your past. It's what's gotten you to here. So like gratitude to that experience, but also that's not what is happening in the present moment anymore. It's not what is truly alive in you right now. And so learning the art of allowance of what is here to be here fully, and really allowing what is laid dormant in those dark corners of your body to really, yeah, come to the light and like let those layers, the elusive layers of doubt and anger, to release with your love and care. Just having the willingness to investigate, because what resists persists, you know. And it's so true. What we resist truly to start like persist through our life. And it is in the resistance of the feeling that the feeling of resistance grows. And so I do encourage you to commit to yourself to, if you don't already, just develop a formal meditation practice, mindfulness meditation specifically, just sitting on your cushion or in a chair for even just 5 minutes a day. It does so much, just consistency with that. And notice the resistance that is within you to sit in that practice as well. That's part of the practice too, is recognizing resistance of the practice itself. And yeah, just remembering that grief is not linear. Like nobody's grief is going to look the same. Nobody's healing is the same. It's as unique as you are, and you innately deserve to open your heart to feel what is at your core. Like you deserve that for yourself, and to see yourself fully and to love yourself fully, because there is only one you. There's never going to be another you in all time memorial. Like that's insane to think about, that like you are it. Like you are the only you that will ever exist. And so embracing that fully as much as you can. Yeah. And so with that, we'll go ahead and enter our practice for the day. And yeah, so just establishing yourself in a posture that embodies wakefulness and dignity. And whether that's, yeah, having your eyes open, I invite you to close them if that's comfortable for you. But if they are open, you can allow what is coming through your eyes to be here, not attaching to specifics, but also opening the ears and experiencing the body through proprioception and all other senses, allowing those senses to be present. Tuning into the sensations of the body as part of our experience here. And we begin to focus on the moment and how the body is sitting, like whatever you're sitting on, whether it's the floor, a chair, a cushion, a blanket, noticing the contact of your feet to the ground. And as we enter this space of the inner terrain, really just giving yourself full permission to experience the coming into this moment of embodied awareness. And letting go of everything other than what is in this moment. And gathering your awareness into the sensations of the breath in the body. And the invitation here is to kind of just drop in, feeling your body. And like, how is the body sitting in space? How the spine is rising out of the pelvic bones. How the shoulders sit above the rib cage. How the head is sitting upon the neck. There's no right or wrong way to do this. Just simply dropping into the body as a whole and breathe in a way that is being rather than doing. So as you are dropping in to this inner terrain, I invite you to just notice one element of the experience of the body sitting here. And that is focusing on the breath sensations, which is one of the most effective ways of stabilizing the mind and grounding it into the present moment. And so you're bringing your full attention into the breath coming into the body and the breath leaving the body. And we're not trying to push or pull the breath as it moves in and out. We are simply being breathed. The breath moving in and out on its own accord, but feeling it within the body. And so, where has the mind alightened to feel the breath in the body? Allow your curiosity to take flight in the noticing of what is occurring and where you feel the breath the most. Maybe it's in the opening of the nostrils. Maybe you can also feel the breath in the space of the chest. Or maybe it can be in your belly expanding and contracting. And I'll ask you, can you feel the full duration of the inhale coming into this body and the full duration of the exhale as it's leaving the body? You can feel comfortable sensing what place in the body feels right to you. Dropping into the belly is something I do suggest for just it being furthest away from the mind, from the thought process, but also acknowledging where it is that is landing most comfortably for you right now. And so you're just noticing what is going on here as we sit, riding on the waves of the breath as it moves in and as it leaves, with our full attention. And it won't take you long to realize your mind does have a life of its own. And even if you've given it this assignment to stay on the breath and ride with the in and outs of the breath, it is guaranteed your mind is going to go someplace else. And you will get caught up and carried away. And then in a certain moment, you realize that you were supposed to be focusing on the breath. And so in that experience, it's not a judgment that you've gotten carried away. It's just a simple noticing of what may have arisen, the thought that you are noticing, and simply returning back to the breath. This noticing of the terrain of the mind and realizing that we've gotten carried away in the thought process is a part of the meditation. Of knowing that this is the nature of the mind. It's a recognition that the mind doesn't necessarily stay on one focused subject because it already is in the habit of generating stories and narratives, planning or worrying, thinking about the future, remembering this or that. So it is when you notice your mind is not on your breath, which is your chosen object of attention in this moment. You just notice what is on your mind that is a valid object of a sensation of the body, and gently bringing back the awareness to the subtleties of the sensations of the breath. And this is not an easy practice. It does take discipline. So honoring yourself for moving through this process of like forgetting and remembering. Just be fully present to what is unfolding for you now. Whether it is unpleasant, pleasant, or neutral. They all hold space. They all deserve the space to be held. And so in a way, it's like allowing your entire life to depend on this very moment in being with your experience. We are learning to inhabit the space of the body, to inhabit the space of our awareness, until there is really no separation between the two, where you become embodied awareness. And in the acceptance of what is fully here in this moment, it allows us to alchemize a potentially negative or unpleasant experience into a neutral or even pleasant experience. So right now, there's no place to go, nothing to cling to, no special thing you are trying to attain, but just this moment, just this breath, just this being human. Just this breath and this moment. Notice the space between the inhale and the exhale. And the space between the exhale and the inhale. Remaining connected to the breath. We become okay with what is going on exactly as it is within the body, within the mind, and in the outer world. Just experiencing the spaciousness that can exist and be experienced in your body with your awareness. So as this guided meditation comes to a close, if your eyes were open, I invite you to slowly begin to open them, staying in touch with the body breathing, maybe shifting your posture a little bit. And just see if you can keep a seamless continuity in the breathing of the body, even as we move into whatever is next for our day. So we are inviting the idea that meditation is not separate from life itself, that we bring this practice into the rest of our day ahead. And yeah, just staying in touch with this practice that we cultivated, and allowing, just our awareness to remain embodied. So I would love to have you pop in the chat any main takeaways from our time together today. If you feel called to share, I would love to reflect on that with you. Shannon, recognizing the feelings of grief in our heart seems so simple, but so powerful. That's exactly it. It's a simple practice, not an easy one to access at first, but yeah, it is simple and so powerful to experience. Thank you for sharing, Shannon. Rebecca, meditation is not separate from life itself. Yes, absolutely. Yeah, and so when we bring meditation into life itself, it's more of an informal practice. It's not like the formal sitting, like sitting on your cushion, taking the time out of your day, but it can continue into life itself. Thank you. Marlene, let the layers of grief loosen and release. Yes. I love the visual that I get with that one. Yeah, thank you for sharing. Anna, not to be afraid to sit with the feelings of grief. Sitting here with them has brought some peace today. Thank you for sharing. I'm so glad. Thank you. Thank you, Anna. I'm sure that feels a little bit of relief to feel a little bit more peace as well. So that is a wonderful practice. Alan, opening to the shadow parts of ourselves allows us to experience parts of ourselves we usually suppress, increasing our awareness of our entire experience. Through mindfulness, we give ourselves permission to live with these shadow parts as part of our whole self. Yes, I just got chills reading that. Yes, such a good reflection. Thank you for sharing that, Alan. Wonderful, wonderful. Yeah, so I, again, just thank you so much for showing up today. These sessions are freely offered and donations are really appreciated. They just help us continue to serve the Sangha in this way. I'll go ahead and drop my Venmo and PayPal links in the chat. If you feel called to donate, feel free. If not, no worries. It's such an honor to have you here and practice with you. So that should be in the chat. And if you want to stay connected with me personally, I'll also drop a link in the chat that you can be added to my email list. You just fill out a little form after clicking that link. And I just want to say, may the merits of our practice extend beyond our lives and ripple out into the lives of everyone that we may touch. Thank you so much, everybody. Wishing you the most blessed day ahead. And until next time, thank you so much. Namaste.